counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of all hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Up.
As we commence the sitting, the Houses of Parliament, we do so by welcoming those who are visiting with us this day, members of the European Union led by Ambassador Marianne Van Steen, Mr. Luca Luconte, Program Coordinator. Also, we are seeing Ms. Sharon Weber, Governance Advisor from the British High Commission. Members visiting from the Chetwood Memorial Primary School, all the way from Northwest St. James. I think they're here to listen attentively to their Member of Parliament, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Horace Chang. For those who are watching via live stream, those who are visiting on live stream, watching live stream, and also on PBCJ, we welcome you all to the sitting this morning, this afternoon. We also want to welcome the U.S. team from the U.S. Embassy, led by H.E. Nick Perry and Miss Alice Tibal. We welcome you to this sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terrelong, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Enriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblis, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mrs. Malahoo Fort. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Statement by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to join you in welcoming members to the sitting of the House today, and particularly to welcome the members of the gallery who are here, their excellencies from the Diplomatic Corps and students from high schools within the St. James community, as well as other members of the constituency of the Deputy Prime Minister and a member for St. James Northwest, who of course will be delivering his contribution to the sectoral debate at a later point today. Mr. Speaker, as is customary, we would move for the deferring of the items leading up to public business so as to allow for the member to make his presentation ahead of. And then we'll do then a recommittal of these areas, in particular to deal with motions to be given orally. So, Mr. Speaker, the opposition leader of parliamentary business and I have had discussions in relation to the continuation of the questions that were in fact on the order paper before the termination of the last session of Parliament. And as per the rule, these questions can be retabled, and I expect that they will be in short order so that those questions which members would want to have answers for can indeed be allowed to have its course. Mr. Speaker, I therefore move that we suspend the agenda items down to public business in order to have the member from St. James Northwest, Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica, and Minister of National Security, Dr. the Honorable Horace Chang, to make his presentation.
Members, as it is requested, the question is on the floor. Those in favor? Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Member from Northwest St. James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's ironic to get in the seat. You're my neighbor, immediate neighbor. It is my privilege today to present my 7th sectoral presentation on national security. Not seeking a long-served award, but I guess it's one of the longest periods as Minister of National Security. And I want to acknowledge and express my appreciation and gratitude to the Honorable Prime Minister for his continued trust and confidence. To my esteemed cabinet colleagues with whom I have had the privilege of working over the last 7 years, my appreciation extends to the members of both sides of the House with whom I have occupied the space But I must give some special mention to the class of 2020 behind me, especially many young ladies, as I have a special interest in their having helped to recruit them. But I want to, despite being elected in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, they have demonstrated remarkable resilience and unity throughout these difficult times. Members of the diplomatic corps have joined us today. They are partners. They have been named, but I have to make a repeat as many of them represent international partners that I have had the privilege of working with over the last few years in the area of national security. The European Union, the US Embassy, and the British High Commission, otherwise known in the security circle, the ABC partners, and the members of the Chinese Embassy who is present. I also express my appreciation and welcome to all of you. I want to acknowledge my Minister of State, Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, who sits behind me and beside me at all times, hardworking, energetic, and efficient. To my Permanent Secretary, who has been on with me for a year, Ambassador Alistair Stone Roof, coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has really brought a breath of fresh air to a very difficult ministry, and our diplomatic skills are proving very useful in taking on the difficult issues in the ministry. The Chief Technical Directors, all members of the staff of the Ministry of National Security, the heads of agencies which make up the complex ministry that is responsible for public order, public safety, and the general security of our country. Of course, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to the great constituency of Northwest St. James for electing me for the 5th consecutive term, making this a historic achievement as the first member of Parliament in this constituency to achieve such a milestone. I'm indebted to the dedicated team of councillors led by Senator Charles Sinclair, supported by Mr. Joshua Cummings, elder in his church, alongside Mr. Damian Brown, and the recently elected Ms. Donya Allen Thompson, the sole female councillor of the St. James Municipal Council. So you have to hail from Northwest St. James. My gratitude extends to my management team, the best in the business, supervisors, workers, volunteers, and the many supporters, including those from various community organizations who continue to offer unwavering moral and political support. Your enduring loyalty and strength are deeply appreciated. And last but by no means least, I must express my deepest gratitude to my family. They not only provide moral support, but also bear the brunt of the cynicism and face a subtle and sometimes not so subtle sleight of hand that sometimes causes lifelong bruises as a result of our involvement in public service. I'm thankful for their love, unwavering loyalty, and steadfast support, which allow me to continue in this important, even if challenging service to our country, despite the continued challenges. Mr. Speaker, over the past 2 decades, the country has experienced a persistent high level of criminal violence, except for a few periods of intermittent reductions following the imposition of severe legislations, states of public emergency. The Ministry of National Security has the awesome responsibility of ensuring crime reduction, public safety, and public order. This mandate is compounded by the great sense of individualism and freedom that exists within our society, without the associated sense of responsibility to the nation state. This, if left unchecked, can fuel an escalating level of disorder. Moreover, our strategic location in the Caribbean, combined with our inherent entrepreneurial and creative spirit, makes the country a prime location for sophisticated transnational criminal activities. As a government, we knew we had to change tack and direction to effect real change and transformation. We knew it would be costly, both financially and politically. But with the unwavering support of this Honourable Prime Minister, we set the course, and we are now seeing the results. As I will highlight today, the journey has been based on 3 strategic policy directions, namely, 1, transforming and strengthening our security agencies, in particular the Jamaica Constabulary Force, our principal law enforcement agency. 2, transformative investment in socially challenged communities in a holistic manner. And 3, ensuring an effective and relevant legislative framework in which to operate. Mr. Speaker, I will first deal with the law enforcement agencies and their capacity. I know my concerns expressed, but let me go through that fairly quickly, as I've said some of these things before. The strengthening of the JSF involves a holistic transformation program. It's currently in full gear and proceeding at a steady pace. The program encompasses a range of initiatives focusing on people, operational capacity, and the delivery of high-quality policing services to the public. It is to be noted that the investment program was interrupted by COVID-19 pandemic, but we focused and continued on the primary features that would impact on the quality of the police force and its professionalism. A critical area of program is the improvement of the physical infrastructure of the force, which has been abandoned or neglected over the last 50 years. In fact, indeed, since independence. Indeed, from its formation over 100 years back. This initiative is not only providing a conducive zone for work for effective law enforcement, it serves as a significant moral booster to officers so that they can go to work in a functionally appropriate space as professionals, as the professionals they are. We set out a process in a very structured and systematic way, as we do in almost all what we have attempted in the security forces and social investment. As a result, the government initiative, Project Rock, Rebuild, Overhaul, and Construct was developed. This is geared at providing modern, citizen-friendly facilities for both the police officers and the citizens they serve. Madam Speaker, for the first time in our history, we are building new police facilities with embedded features designed specifically for the operations of the law enforcement officers. We have blueprints for police stations, where all new construction adhere to standardized features based on their size and service demands and essentially to professional requirements. In a bid to expedite the process, the government not only engaged the Consolidated Fund and the Ministry of Finance, but collaborated with the National Housing Trust and the Jamaica Social Investment Fund for additional capital expenditure. The National Housing Trust focused on areas where they have built homes. Security is crucial to the communities, where Social Investment Fund directed its assistant to bringing opportunities to areas that have particular challenges in keeping with its mandate in dealing with extreme poverty. Madam Speaker, this reflects the high priority this government placed on achieving public safety for its citizens. Under Project ROC, we can report that to date, we have 14 new fully rehabilitated police stations with the requisite design features, namely Shady Grove in St. Catherine, Port Antonio and Buff Bay in Portland, Olympic Gardens in corporate area, Mount Salem in St. James, Spring Hill, Franklin Town, Adelphi, Lionel Town, Four Parts, Denham Town, Monique, Bogwalk, and Hopewell. Hopewell, the most latest, has all the required features we have put in place for a modern, interconnected police station. 5 new stations are currently under construction, namely Frome, Little London, Stonehill, Anchovy, and Lacovia. The 3 major construction projects are on track. The Westmoreland Divisional Headquarters, which could become the area headquarters, for which we broke ground recently, is under construction and proceeding smoothly. That station displays a new concept. It reflects the kind of station we are building for the police across the island. The St. Catherine North Divisional Headquarters, for which we are about to break ground any time now, and of course the Specialized Operation West Facility in Montego Bay, representing a combined investment of nearly $15 billion in new police facilities. This is the first major attempt at providing police officers. That station, I think, is the Westmoreland new headquarters. The architect's design impression of what a new station in Westmoreland will look like when completed. This is a major investment in infrastructure, and as I said, reflects the government commitment to the public safety, good order, but also to ensure that our professionals who are protecting us have appropriate working conditions. 5 new stations are going through the public investment approval process, and some may begin by the end of this financial year. That is the St. Catherine North Divisional Headquarters. Amity Hall and Granville in St. James are going to the PIB, and one could begin before the end of the financial year. Bull Bay in St. Andrew, K Valley in St. Anne, and Dias in Hanover. The Dias police station will be built beside an infant school on land that will be donated by the Pat's family and will be built in honor of the mother of a former Prime Minister under P.J. Patterson. They are all slated for construction, and some are like to begin before the end of this financial year. All police facilities have undergone significant levels of repair and renovation in order to ensure that they are in functional state for occupants. In fact, it was made an order that all police stations with acute problems, especially sanitation and security, should be addressed even in the short term before we do the full rehabilitation of the station. A number of stations have undergone major rehab in order to accommodate the full digitization program of the force. That too is a major aspect of rehabilitation which we'll segue into. The public can say that they are witnessing tangible efforts by the government to truly professionalize the police force and to provide them with the infrastructure befitting of their professional status. The area that generated most interest, of course, is that of a technological transformation. Mr. Speaker, globally, policing has seen digitization and the adoption of new technologies playing a crucial role in improving efficiency and performance. In this regard, the Jamaican police are ahead of the curve as we seek to strengthen the capacity of the police force. The use of technologies of force multiplier is a vital component of ensuring that the police will be efficient and effective across the country. In the last 5 years, the JCF has executed several significant changes and projects, starting with the establishment at the human resource level of a technology branch headed by an assistant commissioner of police to manage the entire technological transformation of the force, working in collaboration with the ministry which leads on large projects. The build-out of the communications infrastructure includes the upgrade and expansion of the P25 radio communication network to ensure island-wide radio coverage, the upgrade and expansion of the JCF microwave network, the rollout of network connectivity across all police facilities using the JCF microwave network, government broadband network, GovNet, satellite connectivity, and all the modalities as required, ensuring that there be total connectivity of all our police facilities across the island by the end of this financial year. Madam Speaker, efficient communication, Mr. Speaker, efficient communication in real time at any time, anywhere in the island, is maybe the most far-reaching change we are establishing in the Jamaica Constabulary Force. The digitization and automation of the force's business process will, of course, leverage that foundation laid with effective communication infrastructure. We now have the replacement of the big books, as I've said before in the House, by the station record management system and case management systems. Issuing of traffic tickets using handheld electronic devices, a very visible and important transformation. In fact, they don't make a joke of it, Mr. Speaker. You're aware. They used to say when you meet the police on the road, they say left or right. Now they're saying the police are issuing tickets left, right, and center. And they're holding there. Reflects that our officers are keen on public order, but any little loophole left, we like to place all kind of blemishes in our officers. But with the introduction of an effective ticketing system, that has gone its way, and we are doing much to improve order on the road. Still a big problem. There are more cars on the road. You're aware. We are friends in Montego Bay and the emergence of the markets and the Sectoral that drive with a certain speed at all times, wherever they are. But that's the nature of the public order issue. Vehicle tracking and monitoring using the Amber Connect fleet management system, which is primarily new vehicles, is in place. The procurement of an enterprise resource planning system, support asset management, requisition and budgeting is in place, will be fully operational this year to ensure that the investment we are making in infrastructure and equipment can be effectively managed and maintained. The presence of the Smart Check application in the vehicles and on mobile devices to all the officers in the field to access critical information in real time is important to the effectiveness of their work. The police emergency dispatch using the upgraded CAD system is in place. Biometric ID capture using the upgraded multimodal biometric identification system is in place. The capture of field confrontation and interaction using body-worn cameras. We have deployed 568 within our existing resources. But, Mr. Speaker, we know that there's very few incidents these days of people shouting, blocking the road and calling for justice. We will continue to acquire the cameras, but it is not the urgency with some to make of it, quite frankly. The police has been effective in using the tools we have given them, in the training that have been introduced, as I demonstrate later, and they are moving in a highly professional way to ensure that those they apprehend are those that need to be apprehended. And there's very little incidents that of personal abuse that can be spoken about. Of course, they have been working long hours under risky conditions on the last week, and I'll refer to both incidents. We are aware that they were confronted in night, and those officers should be commended for the courage, by heavily armed gunmen. And the patrol vessel, they were in the area, not by accident, but by design, based on the strategic deployment introduced by the police officers, and they apprehended a gang of, 6 heavily armed young men. 4 died in combat, 2 escaped, but the officers were there, 1 officer was injured. But it reflects the increased strategic deployment of our resources to intercept and stop the kind of criminal activity that is affecting the society. Expansion of CCTV surveillance on the Jamaica program is continuing. There are 900 cameras across the island. We are installing 550 this year, and we'll seek to achieve the goal of 3,000 over the next 3 years. Madam Speaker, when you visit our small, newly operated station in Hopewell, Hanover, you will see the comprehensive range of technological tools that is added in a police station. You'll understand the impact of this on the efficiency and the image of the police force. Good management entails the establishment of standards that can be easily monitored and evaluated in order to ensure that service quality and gains made do not deteriorate over time. And we'll never, ever get with the police facilities and will be allowed to deteriorate the level they were before. And the police itself is instituting standards in the current leadership to ensure that they are maintained both in physical infrastructure and within the professional quality of the police force. So our area of quality management and standards was discussed and implemented. We view the transformation of the police force we do not view the transformation of the force as an end itself, but more as a means of enhancing the quality of service delivered to the public. In a bid to ensure the consistency and sustainability of its services, the Jamaica Constable Force, for the first time in its history, and among the leading institutions in Jamaica, pursued and achieved ISO 9001 quality management certification starting in March 2022. At present, the scope of certification program involves 14 sites. Going forward, we intend to expand the scope to 21 this year, with the onboarding of 7 new core sites, establish the Audit and Inspection branch within the Inspectorate and Professional Standards Bureau to strengthen the internal auditing capabilities and ensure that we maintain our certification. The IProbe is now headed by one of our most senior Deputy Commissioner of Police. He understands what is required. He has full and long lifelong care in the police force and will ensure that the quality of our and standards in the police force is maintained and will leave a legacy that will be carried on. Gradually expand the scope to cover all head station geographic areas in the first phase and ultimately build out to all 186 police stations. Ensure the transformation process took place within the force in a timely and efficient manner. We had to make sure organizational changes. Madam Speaker, in terms of organizational redesign and restructuring, several changes were made. The force development and logistic portfolio was established, driving planning and helping direct transformation process to the force, and also taking charge of property management and other logistics activity, as well as the development of appropriate curriculum and development for the police force. The current Commissioner of Police headed that portfolio as Deputy Commissioner. We established a specialized operation formation as a replacement of the Mobile Reserve to execute high-risk police operations. We established the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, which now has the beat police attached to it as well, the Beat Officer Patrol Division, which some would have seen active in the square at Halfway Tree. Established of the Welfare Department for the first time within the Office of the Commissioner of Police to ensure that the welfare of our officers, especially when injured on the job, are in fact taken care of. We respect and we protect our police officers. They are not important professional and important national assets. They must be looked after properly. The Community Safety and Security Branch has to play a more critical role in violence interruption and the maintenance of safe communities has been expanded and strengthened. The build-out of the quick response team across the island, that's the bikers in urban areas, is a critical part of our response to high violence operators, especially in the congested urban centers. Mr. Speaker, I want to note, the Legal Affairs Department of the police has been strengthened, in fact fully developed. We now have 20 experienced civilian lawyers assisting in the development of cases for the court. So the police officers will go to court prepared and ready to defend and prosecute. Mobility-like communication is crucial to the effectiveness of the police. They must have adequate mobility to be present and visible on our roadways to quickly and effectively respond to citizens' calls and critical incidents and for managing public order. The government has invested significantly in police vehicles, both bikes and pickups and SUVs. We have spent some $4.6 billion to bring the fleet near to a functioning level. We're still not quite where we should be, and in fact this year we'll be making a significant effort to put the additional numbers in place to give the police full mobility. That's an important force multiplier component. And finally, Mr. Speaker, we looked at the human resource development sector. The police officers, the human resources are crucial to the execution of all police activities. It is the effectiveness and the quality of those officers that will make the difference and their organizational deployment. I will identify a few of the noteworthy achievements in this year. Indeed, I cannot document all of them. Much of it is to do with who you meet and who you interact with on the streets. I think their visibility, their professional look and their professional operation is very visible to all Jamaica. I think members of the Police Federation are here and our officers, I want to welcome them. But I think every Jamaican takes pride in their police officers. They see them operating on our highways and our communities. In terms of the full development of the force, for the first time in the history of Jamaica, we have brought the police to establishment level. 14,000. Mr. Speaker, we're not going to put more boots on the ground. The police officer is a professional in every aspect of his life. He operates all times as a police officer. They'll tell you when off duty he's still a policeman, and the society depends on him at all times. And we took the required step and process to ensure we could expand the police force at least to establishment level. We'll take a look at another state if we need to go beyond that, but at this stage we'll be looking to consolidate our force to ensure we have enough sub-officers and officers throughout the force to provide quality supervision and ensure the quality, professional quality of the force remains on track. Staff welfare was institutionalized, indicated before. The JISTV now boasts of a transparent, merit-based promotional system, incorporating examination, developmental courses, and accelerated promotion. We'll look at expanding the officer corps from 2.5 to 3.5% during the course of this year, which will ensure that we have a hierarchical effect of increased number of sub-officers required to supervise the thousands of young officers we have recruited. There are many experienced police officers with 20 years services, 15 years, 25 years, who have not had a single promotion. We are not doing it on an ad hoc basis. We are systematically ensuring that we can expand this rank and file of our sub-officers to cover the recent recruits. Indeed, the numbers are sometimes of concern. We have nearly 6,000 of the 14,000 officers, nearly 7,000 that have been recruited since 2016. Those are young officers who require supervision. We want to ensure that they get adequate supervision, but in the process, we are training even the experienced officers on the job. Sometimes, of course, the Commission has that flexibility, and I was interested, recently went to Savannah, a station I'll speak to later on, And we met a young officer who was given the highest praise by the school community as one of the finest police officers, a school resource officer. He had 28 years service, was still a constable. Commissioner made him a corporal the same day, right? There are many more instances like that, but we're going about a systematic approach, right? Right? We work with the Caribbean Military Academy to deliver initial officer training program, which aims to preparing officers to fill leadership roles in the basic officer level. The command course at the National Police College, because this is the CMA is not replacing the police college. The command course at the National Police College for senior officers has been revamped from 10 weeks to 39 weeks. As a three-semester program, and is almost equivalent to a master's program now. We are collaborating with Delaware State University in the United States for graduate level training for our police officers. And some, I think, a significant number of us have started that program. And for the first time in its history, the NPCJ, the National Police College, is a path to acquire NC vet certification for all its training programs covering entry-level, specialized areas, and supervisory management to ensure that we have the professional skills to manage the police force. Mr. Speaker, one that I think everybody interested in. We know we have accidents, but the School of Motor Vehicle Driving at NPCJ is now an accredited training institution offering NCT vet accredited training in commercial driving at all levels. Important as a government, we have provided the best compensation package for police officers in the history of this country. As a government, we have provided the best compensation package for police officers for the first time. We are not saying we have made them rich. What we have sought to do is to bring the police officer at least at a competitive level in our society. I cannot compete with North America and Cayman, but they should be competitive in Jamaica. And I think we have done that and laid a foundation. Today, they're in a better position, not only in terms of the relative competitiveness they are in, but they now have a better base for continued negotiations. Yes. The police officers are now placed in their own sector in the public sector service, protective service division, including police officers, JDF, and firefighters. As an issue that I've been requesting for a long time, over many years, this government executed and implemented the plan. Among maybe a small game, but a very important thing to note, is that one of the more lasting impact of this readjustment in compensation is that the retired police officers will retire with a pension. Yes. And I say it in that way because much of their original compensation was tied up in allowances. Yes. When a police officer retired before 2021, they retired into poverty. They retired into raw poverty. They had to be hustling before they get out to find a job somewhere, something they could do to earn a living. Because most of their take-home pay was tied up in allowances. So when they retired, they got from the basic salary, which means an officer of up to 30 years service to retire. If he's a constable, if a corporal, they retire taking home less than, what, a couple $100 a month. We got the exact figure. And any other time, they retired into abject poverty and had to be hustling to find a way. Today, they're not retiring wealthy, but they can take a little holiday before they look at work. Whether it is to stay at home and enjoy a little peace and quiet or go visit their family in North America before they say they're going to work. Because now the entire compensation is part of the salary, and it is a much different picture. And the constable may move from 600,000 pension to at least 2.4 million in terms of their take-home package for pension benefit. Security improves public safety and provides a strong foundation for economic development and prosperity. Our police officers can be assured that their work is not only for protective services, but is designed to strengthen the economic foundation of the country, contributing towards their own welfare, but the welfare of all Jamaicans. Hear, hear. That it's the only foundation we can build a strong, independent, prosperous society is a secure community. We have added 1,105 civilian posts to the JCF. These are people who are working temporarily for years, and they were at the very bottom, worse, not badly treated, because when they retire, they could only get a NIS pension, which is a good thing. But considering they're working people, that's what they're reduced to. And sometimes they would have challenges because they would work at station for years, sometimes on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and to all a very bad way of treating some of our Jamaican citizens who provide extended service. This government changed that. Yes. And show them. I must comment, Mr. Speaker, not only commending the outgoing Commissioner of Police who retired recently after serving his country some 42 years in security, but in the selection of a successor, all 4 deputy commissioners were interviewed. I emphasize all 4 deputy commissioners because all 4 had the capacity to lead the Jamaica Conservative Force. It's the first time in over 30 years that we could look without hesitation, without discussion, at the police force for providing their own commissioner. Right? You know, even when a police commissioner was appointed on the force, it is known that we brought in some strange people to literally do the work, if not supervising them. Behind them were some people who were not Jamaicans who were dictating what happened in the police force. We built the force in such a way that young police officers can look toward become commissioner as Jamaicans. The continued evolution of the force and its expanded size and increasing use of technology, it was decided that change management skills were deemed very critical going forward. Indeed, you are looking at somebody who had to be a CEO, in addition to being an outstanding police officer. Consequently, the Public Service Commission, the Police Service Commission, found Dr. Kevin Blake as the right person at this time. His experience in the police force includes intelligence, logistics, policy, research, geographic policing, and makes him highly qualified as an individual. In fact, Dr. Blake's intellectual acuity makes him a chief executive of any company in Jamaica. And we must understand and note the police force is maybe the largest company in the country. We have the commissioner oversees a body of some 16,000 people. He has a first degree in computer science and mathematics, master's in computer-based management system, and a PhD in sustainable development. These proficiencies and skills are critical to the successful administration of a large organization that operates in a dynamic environment. We are indeed pleased to have Dr. Blake as our new commissioner, a truly Jamaican success story. Indeed, Mr. Speaker reminds me of another young man, by saying passing, who come from St. Catherine, went to one of those, not one of those famous school ties, now he's the executive of the country. Madam Speaker, the smooth and seamless transition from Major General Anthony Anderson to Dr. Blake is testament to the level of human resource development that has taken place within the organization. There will be some hurdles along the way, but I'm confident we can overcome them. I retain a regular connection with the Commissioner, exploring the current and emerging trends. However, I do not interfere in operational matters, but continue the program of investment to ensure that we can take the force to where it should be in the 21st century. I want to further express my deep appreciation to Major General Anthony Anderson, who over the past 6 years initiated the broad range of changes that helped to ensure that we could take this police force to the level it is today. He is on the holiday, respect. Young officers can now look to the kind of carrying the force. Finally, Madam Speaker, on the security side, let me speak before I. Territorial integrity and security are critical elements of our law enforcement and defense apparatus. It focuses on the prevention of transnational criminal activity and the breach of persons through the borders. Several entities come together to ensure the security and control of our country's borders. Because transnational crime is always a clear and present danger and a risk to our society. Transnational criminal activity. Jamaica is between 2 large continents. To our north is the largest commercial market in the world. The United States and the Canadian economy may be controlled in terms of commercial activity, and buying power may be a third of the world's economy. In simple language, it's the market of desire and the destination of all and this across the globe. But we sit in the middle, and south of us is some of the biggest producers of contraband drugs. Drugs, minerals, and another point of source of all kinds of other activities. It is that reason why the government and all governments have tried to make Jamaica an important logistics center, because we are a good crossroads point. The pirates of many years ago, hundreds of years ago, proved that. But we have to, on the security side, ensure our country's borders are well protected. It involves a number of agencies, JDF Coast Guard, which we have in fact re-equipped, the Marine Police, the Customs Agency, and the Passport and Immigration Agency. It's worth noting that the head of the JCA is now a member of the National Security Council, that's the Customs Agency. Given the vital role tourism plays in our economy, the government's policy underscored the necessity of maintaining a delicate balance between border security and facilitating travel. Over the years, substantial investments have been made by the government in enhancing border security. Investment includes the coastal radar system, acquisition of offshore patrol vessels, but critically, the use of technological solutions to manage and regulate security and movements at our ports of entry, in particular airports, where the visible change is now clear to all. Only last week in Montego, gentlemen, how it was easy and experience to walk through the Montego Bay Airport. They landed at peak hour, and they're out in a few minutes, walking through, literally walking through. We have not only seen the physical expansion of the busiest airport, but now going through the halls of any busy day is a far different experience from what existed previously, as we install the kiosk and the e-gates to ensure that there's a pleasant experience coming into Jamaica. The Immigration Restriction, Commonalities Act and the Aliens Act are currently being updated to harmonize and modernize the legal framework to effectively address current border security and control mechanism, to strengthen anti-terrorism measures and improve the activities of PICA with greater support for the use of technology. Indeed, we'll have moved from the AP system to the PNR system rapidly during the course of this year, and it will even be easier and indeed a pleasant experience to come off a crowded plane after a long distance as our Minister of Tourism fills them up and walk easily through the airport. Right? Today we'll table. I take the opportunity, of course, to make a short comment to remind all of us, since I know when I speak from Parliament to address the entire nation, there's only one legitimate site for our C5 form, enter Jamaica.gov.jm. All the sites are almost bogus. They are the hustling sites. You know, they are hustlers. Unfortunately, the countries have introduced this aspect of things, suffer the same problem. So we have to keep marketing, informing, and identifying the issue with our Jamaicans and incoming visitors. For Jamaicans in particular, it might be easier because we are introducing the e-gates and the e-passports. First of them in the region. But I'm telling you, e-gates. If you get an e-passport, you walk off the plane, you walk up to the e-gate. You don't have to stop at the kiosk. You just walk to the e-gate with your passport, e-passport, and you walk through. And you literally, it takes you whatever time it takes to walk from the plane to inside. My tourism minister ensured that. From time to time, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there has been some issue of how we operate as law enforcement, that we tend to isolate ourselves and we are, looking inwardly. Not true. Security issues are not broadcast publicly for a good reason. Yep. And I want to briefly look at law enforcement and the collaboration and cooperation we have across the region. Jamaica law enforcement has to be strong. But we must have effective coordination among our local agencies and strong cooperation with our international and regional partners. We emphasize that we make no apologies for it. We work closely with our international and regional partners. Bilateral cooperation has remained a key priority of the government in addressing transnational crime, which is our biggest problem. drug transshipment, and the advanced fee fraud activity. In the areas of collaboration include training, intelligence and information sharing, and joint operations where necessary in transnational criminal activity. All of this operates under established legal framework, memorandum of understanding that is required for countries to work with each other on law enforcement. Security is something we are dealing with individual freedom and detention and freedom of activity. It cannot be done on a weekend basis by somebody who likes Jamaica, whether they are Jamaicans or non-Jamaicans. It has to be in the framework of effective legislative framework. Critical security partners comprise the ABC Group in particular, America, Britain, and Canada, for want of better language, all of agencies working with our local counterparts in Jamaica to combat transnational organized crime. We have police officers as security attaches based at all our Jamaican mission in the USA, as well as a liaison officer in the New York Intelligence Fusion Center. And that's although it's a city police, it's a large police department. New York is maybe the busiest entry point in the United States. It's also a treasure destination for criminals. The police have a very senior intelligence officer operating in the Fusion Center in New York. So, and our diaspora are welcome to make contact with any of our officers in the United States. We have a senior superintendent in Washington, D.C., and an inspector in Miami, and the officers in New York, and several inspectors. We also have implants at the CARICOM Gun Intelligence Unit in Trinidad, and impacts and the Intelligence Fusion Center in Trinidad and Barbados. Madam Speaker, it's crucial that the citizens feel the benefit of the change, and this transmits not only to public safety and good order, but to other services critical to the welfare of citizens. It is the policy of the government that service delivered by state agencies should meet minimum quality standards. We believe that these services, which include those delivered by our various security agencies, must be delivered in an efficient, city-centered manner that affirms the rights and dignity of customers. To enforce our enforcement capabilities, with digitization and integration of cutting-edge technologies, we have significantly addressed several inefficiencies and pain points of service delivery. Among notable improvements, implementation of an online application system for police certificates of criminal records to eliminate the long lines at the respective offices. Yes. Implementation of online passport issuance and renewal application systems at PICA. Issue of electronic e-passports. Implementation of electronic e-gate self-service immigration kiosk. Implementation of online tracking system for applications submitted to the FLA. Implementation of an online process for the renewal of private security regulatory authority. Introduction of an electronic ticketing system for the motor vehicle offenders. The anticipated opening of the brand new state-of-the-art forensic pathology suite will significantly reduce the wait time for post-mortem examination. This will essentially mean a total renewal of Institute of Forensic Science and Legal Medicine, and one of the best facilities in the Western Hemisphere for forensics. Our commitment to strengthening law enforcement capital has been strong, continues to be unabated. We are mindful that full return on investment will only be realized upon the completion of our initiatives. Nevertheless, we are witnessing good signs that our investment are steadily generating positive outcomes. Yes. The JISTV today stands as one of the most advanced police force. The IFCM as one of the best institutions in this part of the hemisphere. Madam Speaker, Mr. President, not only the police look better, they all agree. The lawyers don't tell them some of the female officers are distraction in court. But they are performing at a high level. They have indeed become the embodiment of professionalism under our policies and programs. Our policies and our programs have assisted the police force to get to this level. Major crimes have shown a consistent decline, but we know that the primary interest remains the issue of homicides. Give me time to finish. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Speaker, the member's time for speaking having been expired, I beg to move that his time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, there are some guests who came in after we did the welcome, and at this time I will still want to extend a warm welcome to the members from the Chinese embassy led by Mr. Cheng Diozhang, members from the PMI team, I'm seeing them all the way up in the gallery there, and also members from the Hatfield Cultural Group. Thank you. The question is therefore placed on the floor for the extension of the minister's time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member, you may.
Speaker, and my colleagues for allowing me the time to finish what I think is the second phase of my presentation, which will not be as long but even more critical. But I want to bring to attention in kind of closing up this part of my presentation. Major crimes have been on a consistent decline over the last 8 years. What I want to note, in major crime records, is the lowest level in 25 in 2023, the year we just completed. But I know that the critical element is still a focus on homicides. And correctly so, every life lost is a trauma to the entire society. Although it is of interest to note that various surveys, including our own survey, which we do, and the LAPOP survey says that Jamaica has one of the lowest crime victimization rate and of the highest homicide rate, because the killing is among gangsters. They, of course, don't give us any reason to relax. But it is worth noting, Mr. Speaker, as of November last year when we brought the force to out, I want to note this to my members, especially this side. As of November 2023, we approached for the first time full establishment in the force. And we're able to bring in some additional vehicles, take them just to a point where we think they could be functionally effective. We find that in the 6-month period preceding November 23, since then, from November 23 to April 24, we have about a 24% fall in homicide rate. Now, I want to emphasize that, Mr. Speaker, because there's always ongoing dispute and the other side, and it's their right to it's their privilege and right. And in a democracy, good debate is important in maintaining public trust in the system. But we have always maintained that, well, let me say a few more. Gang wars have been significantly reduced. We have today have, in 2024, at the beginning there was 244 active gangs. So far this year we have only identified 106 active gangs. We have seen 27 convictions in some 5 gang trials, including our famous Klansman trial. Right? No problem. In a democracy, we expect any government in power to take some steps, but we executed. We built the force. There are 5 gang matters before the courts. There are 5 gang matters before the court. All right. Right person talking. 3 gang members, there are 5 gang matters before the court, and 3 are near going to the court, and overall there are 64 under active investigation. When they are under investigation, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, they tend to get quieter, move out, disperse, and therefore doing less damage. At the moment, there are a total of 164 gang members who have been charged with predicate offenses. Several large gangs have been disrupted. Of course, the critical Klansman group is noted. One order is quiet. And of course, the Stonecrusher group of Montego Bay has certainly just removed the suspect from the scene. We have also, I'd like to indicate that the police have picked up several contract killing syndicates. But we accept and agree that the homicide rate is still too high.
Yes, yes.
Unacceptable.
Yes.
It is being carried out by, however, largely by drive-by shooting, mostly shooting on the road. Besides domestic issues where conflicts take place, as unfortunately happened, and I comment on it later, note the tragic killing of one student yesterday in a Catholic college, not a government school. The week before, I visited another one in Westmoreland where the student was shot outside the gate. Nonetheless, despite of what is happening, we are trending this year 15% decline in the homicide rate up to today, following an 8% reduction. I want to point out, Mr. President, that, Mr. Speaker, not being contentious, but I have to note again, if we had used the full force of the legislation at the state of public emergency in the last 2 years,
Yes.
while we're building the force to where it is today,
Yes.
we would have saved hundreds of lives.
Mark, block it.
We would have saved lives.
Block
And now the force is where it is to be, with a full strength,
Yes.
equipment and tools to operate.
Yep.
They are showing they can take
we
care of
have
the job.
saved lives.
Right? And we are persisting with our investment, not finished. We are continuing to look at legislation, and we look toward ensuring the training and the facilities are in place to ensure our police force will have the ability to deal with the challenges out there. Later, before the middle of the year, we will in fact add some more transportation while the continuing development of the force, communication, and police stations continue. And we are looking at ensuring we have enough officers. Well, getting to another challenge, we'll be training more officers to ensure we maintain our level, and maybe for a specific reason, take on a little expansion in the force as we see some areas of the community policing needing expansion and strengthening.
Here, here.
The administration has been consistent in its commitment to strengthen the police force.
Yes.
We know we took a political risk, but the country is reaping the benefits, and we will reap the benefits. We have said from day one, if we strengthen the police force, provide the legislation, and give the tools to fight crime, as carry out the social investment, the efforts would converge and we begin to get a sustainable reduction in crime. Not an erratic reduction, not the hunter squads that were reported in early days. They drive around, kill a few gangsters and call it a crime plan. This is a structured policy and program to improve public order, reduce violence, and restore safety in our society.
Sustainable policy.
It is indeed, we made a statement many years ago. It's of interest, you know, and I'll refer to it, Mr. Speaker, that some of the traditional so-called progressives are changing their tune, and I maybe invite the members on that side to take a little ride or read than what they do at Hope Road. I think I'll refer to it later. But there's an article in what you might call the most sensitive part of that newspaper, news operator on North Street, the financial leaner, by two distinguished professors, which indicate clearly that the challenge you face in Latin America is that some have seen crime as a matter of poverty, and that security is not an issue they should. And so clearly that if we intend to get successful development, we have to combine the two things. And it's a challenge both ways. In fact, I'll read from one of it. The problem with this approach is that under current conditions, crime is sometimes motivated not by status, is motivated not more by status than by hunger, by desire to gain quick access to wealth and luxury without having to work for its criminals represent a perversion of the system, which in a way that illicit markets think of drugs, trafficking, prostitution, etc. our provision of the capital and labor markets. Security must be part of what Caribbean and Latin America's developed that effectively. Designing such a strategy and delivering the security many Latin American and Caribbean countries crave is perhaps the most difficult challenge facing many of the region's governments, but it is the most important one. This government took that challenge seriously and have designed a security policy to strengthen the security forces while seeking to invest in this. So, Madam Speaker, thank for the time. I'm going to look at, not only I've indicated clearly that the strengthening of the police force, our security force, the JDF, Coast Guard, PICA, etc., is beginning to impact on our criminal activity.
Comprehensive.
We will complete whatever is necessary, even if it takes necessary to do so in the third term. We're quite comfortable in doing it. Well, let me clarify, Mr. Speaker. The Ministry of National Security is not a social service ministry, but we have a responsibility to coordinate government's social investment program in vulnerable communities. Let me repeat that. We are not taking a social service portfolio onto the ministry, but we have a responsibility to coordinate the government's response in the vulnerable communities. And in doing that, we are building a system that will demonstrate sustainability and transformation that can be scaled at any time to cover the wider areas. It's a role that I might say I'm acting in a dual roles. As the Minister of National Security and as the Prime Minister is the titular head of the City Business Group, and he has given me that responsibility, Deputy Prime Minister. I now function in both roles as the Minister of National Security and the Deputy to coordinate the transforming investment in social volatile communities. In order to effect social, cultural, and behavior changes, we have to ensure sustainable social transformation. It cannot be done by NGOs. It cannot be done by ad hoc policy. There has to be a coordinated, effective activity to ensure social, cultural, and behavior changes to ensure sustainable social transformation. It therefore requires that institutions that serve the communities are resourced and coordinated. The institutions that serve the poor must be the best. Vulnerable communities not only need change in terms of roads, water supply, land titling, zinc fence removal, and garbage collection. That is necessary and essential in the environment. But they need the best social service from the ministries and aids of government, such as the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Education and Health, and the Social Development Commission and other agencies relating to these volatile communities. These entities need to be coordinated, need coordinated collaboration in order to ensure increased efficiency, and that the resources that they have do not reach those who are in real need and not those who seek to take advantage of government inefficiencies. I repeat as Mr. Speaker, it needs to be managed and directed that the very needy, the poor, the ones who are in the worst shape will get the resources and not those who seek to take advantage of government inefficiencies.
Yep, here, here.
Our review of previous efforts in social intervention shows that a significant amount of funds were spent on parallel staffing and consultancies. In fact, on some of the flagship programs, we saw up to 70% of the funding going into personnel, not to those who are poor and needy. This approach, unlike the old method, this old approach depends on projects. We are now moving coordinated government response, which will ensure transformation and sustainability. But the objective is now to strengthen and increase the efficiency of the institutions of government that serve our challenged and volatile communities. Mr. Speaker, we have a solid base, and we have a framework we can operate. Objectively and efficiently, we have to use. The Planning Institute of Jamaica has an objective set of instruments to measure the volatility and vulnerability of any community in Jamaica. We recall that as far back as in the early 2000s, initiated a community renewal program. The 100 most vulnerable communities were identified across the island. Mr. Speaker, this is an objective analysis of critical communities. There's no bias involved. No attempt to look at whatever their political culture is or whatever whether they have in the politics or none at all, or they're organization of faith or otherwise, what church they go to, a set of instruments that is designed to examine the vulnerability of those communities, objectively done by professionals who understand this kind of activity. Poverty, education levels, employment levels, single parents, and a number of other factors which maybe should bring the next publication to Parliament. It's an objective analysis of our critical communities. Ongoing situation analysis, however, allows for the periodic updating of this list, incorporating new communities and remove those from programs that have evolved into a safer community based on the activities of the government. Our partners in the audience have been, in an area they have shown a lot of interest in, have been very supportive. We are now working, however, on a number of communities with emphasis on zones of special operation to ensure the effective coordination and collaboration among the various government agencies. We have, in order to ensure success, we need a strong government structure. So, Mr. Speaker, agencies of government tend to work in silos. It is one of the risks we face, not only inefficiency, but every government wants to have its own flag and get its own stripes. The role of government is to serve the people, not to show how good we are in videos. But it's a challenge. I think it came out of the fact that it's a time to when we still have a tight budget, but when the budget is even tighter, they held on to little. The biblical story, the one who got two talents went and hide them. The man who had 12 was willing to invest and share. And it's a story that has meaning to it. Governments would have little money, they like to show what little they have and keep it to themselves. But to ensure effective social transformation, agents of government that work in the social sector have to cooperate. That's the only way we can ensure efficiency. As a result of this, the Citizen Security Business Group was established on the instruction of the Prime Minister, of which he is the titular head. And that group consists of the Financial Secretary, all permanent secretaries, the heads of the relevant agencies such as Jamaica Social Investment Fund, Heart and STA, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Jamaica Defense Force, the Commissioner of Police, Director General of Major Organized Crime Unit, Major Organized and Anti-Corruption Agency, and of course the PIOJ and other agencies. The group is supported by the Cabinet Office through the Cabinet Secretary and the Office of the National Security. Mr. Speaker, the CSBG is the nearest we will ever get to reflect a whole-of-government approach to any activity in the history of this country. We meet on a quarterly basis and review the activities. It was the instruction and requirement of the Ministry of Finance that every ministry should establish for themselves a citizen security plan line item. I think the impact of last year's compensation review did not lead to full implementation. But the activity of the group continued, and we have indeed have some results which I outline as we proceed. We meet on a quarterly basis. And I'll be frank, whenever we have a challenge, even at a permanent secretary level, the Cabinet Secretary I speak to, and we can have the required attendance and participation of the relevant ministries. However, we have to find a way to engage the communities and the members of Parliament on a wider scale, and I'll speak to it at a later stage. The security plan is the first such program to be instituted using the whole-of-government approach and involves the government, the community, and the international partners. I'll show how the program operates, outline our achievements so far, and discover ongoing achievements will advance the process of transformation within our communities. In this comprehensive program, some 70 social parameters or indicators were identified, dealing with all the type of ills that affect the wider society, and especially the inner city communities and deep rural communities. But we are reduced to 7 key indicators, the items to be monitored carefully to ensure that we are making progress and we make change when necessary. There's parental interface for training. Parenting is maybe one of our biggest challenges in all our communities. Single parenting who are unemployed and struggling to survive and having children after children, child after child. The training and certification of at-risk youth, which is always our program that every government have attempted, but it's of course deal with as at-risk youth who have left school. the creation of safe spaces in the communities, the rehabilitation of police stations to be user-friendly, provide facilities in the community that is not just there for lockups, but there that can be useful to the community in many areas. In fact, most of them have a room for community meetings. The Olympic Way may be one of the best urban model, and I think one was up in St. Andrew, which was there before, where a number of facilities are available to the community around. An effective governance framework, and of course, one of the outstanding issues which we only do every 2 years, and one is ongoing now, and therefore I cannot give a report on its changing status, but the tracking of corruption in justice and security agencies and departments. When then laid out the targets for each area with particular emphasis on the zone, we then laid out the targets for each area with particular emphasis on the zones of special operation. However, aspects of it were national efforts and could not be confined. This included the training of at-risk youth, where HART took a much broader approach, and the parental engagement we considered critical even at the beginning and could not be confined to zones. Entire program is designed for holistic implementation and will be scaled as required. The initial phase, Madam Speaker, the targets were as follows. And at this stage, I commend one of our partners, the European Union, who was among the early ones to contribute toward the funding of the city security plan. Our first targets were to have 400,000 parents interface in order to begin the process of healing trauma in the family, which is a major issue I'll have to expand on. In the 3-year period, certified and trained 58,000 at-risk youth. To create sanctified space across the countries. These safe spaces are green areas, walkways that are towards schools and critical and busy areas in the community. To have at least 74 police stations brought to the required standards. Not those which are being built, which have their design established, but older stations that need to be rehabilitated and brought up to a level that we consider more appropriate. 3 government rent shelters for victims of violence. I think the minister, is here, but 2 are now functional, and a 3rd one is being opened at this point in time. A review of the executive of CSP shows that to date we have successfully rehabilitated 54 of the police stations. In addition to those we are doing on the rock, 75 safe spaces have been indeed created, and I said 2 government shelters are open and functional, and a 3rd shelter is under construction. Approximately 40,000 at-risk youths were trained and certified across the island. The program with hard training of free and training in receipt of a lunch and a stipend to help with the bus fares as well as an enterprise assistant, it is likely that we will see a dramatic increase in training and certification. Object, Mr. Speaker, is to reduce that 400,000 of those not seeking jobs to near 200,000, also to ensure that those leaving school at risk youths will in fact get appropriate training. One area of weakness came out as we did the monitoring and evaluation through the City Security Secretariat. We did 81,000 parents. The engagement proved challenging and demonstrated the virtue of monitoring and evaluation, but also the need to make adjustment. I want to commend that the Ministry of Education has taken steps to ensure that we reorganize that service in a manner that will reach more parents and make the targets in the near future. But that's a critical part of what we do, is to engage our parents in a positive way. So at this point, the ministry is now making the commission, which is a small body of professionals, more an issue of technical support and consulting and standards, while the school service department, which is representing all schools, will engage in mobilizing the parents to be engaged in activities that will help to create a better social atmosphere out there. Jamaica National Crime Victimization Survey is in progress. And when that is out, we'll publish it to demonstrate what progress has been made in the last 3 years. Part of this whole program, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, was the quality of evaluation monitoring. The City Security Secretariat carries out monitoring, evaluation, and learning on an ongoing basis to ensure that we make timely adjustment and changes to our program, thereby assuring attainment of targeted outcomes. Many times these programs run for years. We have the samples being shown, where you get a good student out of the inner city, as I've had many. You help them and they become professionals. You talk to 50 parents and you display that and they go to hotels for training and for graduation. But there was very little effective evaluation of the mass impact and what is being achieved across the community. We changed that by establishing the Citizen Security Secretariat, which does that. That is how we're able to catch up the parenting issue, make change, and moving in a new direction. The CSP partners have indicated that the monitoring evaluation framework is a key strength within the whole of government structure, driving accountability, responsibility, and effective tracking of activities in the program. It is desirable to maintain this kind of framework in the execution of any social investment program. And note, pause again there a little bit, Mr. Speaker, because when we're doing policing work, we collect a lot of data. And we monitor it, and we are investing in what we call a C5 center, where all data is brought to and we can make decisions strategically as well as response time. We tend not to do that for social work, and that's even an error we have done over the years. So we spend a lot of money, has been demonstrated by researchers, but we do not measure the outcome. We're changing that direction, and we expect monitoring and evaluation to become a standard part of government investment in social activities. Indeed, while I've outlined some of the effects of that first program, instead, which was funded by one of our partners, and in fact, with government funding assisting in the process, because much of it was to ensure that the agencies executed their work.
Yes.
So while we got funding from the European Union, that particular aspect of the program, much of what we're the harder to do is work. The building the violence prevention, the areas for violence, for victim of violence had to come from the ministry. The police had to fix the stations, so we used government funding, and if we didn't make the targets, of course, we were not getting the funding. Sounds a little bit harsh, but it is a fact that we tend not to work with each other, even our own institution. And in social services, we have to change that, and I think this program is beginning to change that philosophy and attitude. And even if we don't achieve all the targets in the first phase of the CSP, the changing attitude will be critical in ongoing success and really affecting the change we want across Jamaica. In doing so, Madam Speaker, we made a number. The Jamaican professionals had some innovations. And they introduced a level of risk assessment and case management and psychological review that is now being examined for adoption by other international agencies. And I'd commend the Jamaican social workers who work in the CSP program. They crafted a number of tools and professional innovations to ensure effective implementation. Among them were one, risk assessment tools, where they did the analysis in the community. They did surveys in some of those urban areas, the zones of special operation, other critical areas, able to come up with ideas and establish a set of instruments that can be adopted in any volatile community. That was the work of Owen. And our partners, who are not as selfish as some would like to predict, they look at what we are doing, and we have been sharing with them what we can do and are willing to work with us. Among the risk assessment, which we are now adopting, we find that USAID, who has had a program in Jamaica for many years called Positive Pathways, you now look at how they can work and adopt the risk management and case management tools that we develop in Jamaica in other areas of volatility. The need assessment for case management and psychological services were done in 2021, again in 2024, has indicated a need for increased psychosocial services within the areas where we are currently focusing. The Ministry of Health, as the provision is in the Ministry of Health. But when examined, the research indicated that in the area we surveyed, they demand to serve about 10,000 young citizens with psychosocial services. The capacity of the ministry is about 3,000. So the object of the Citizen Security Plan and social intervention, to my friends on that side, is to, having identified the problem, provide the services to reach those 10,000 people at national level. Right? Because, Mr. Speaker, the only way we can redirect individuals is to start by reaching out to them in a professional way in the psychosocial area. Emotional trauma and stress and antisocial behavior will always lead to violent and criminal behavior if left unaddressed. The majority of these young Jamaicans are to be found in volatile communities, but not all of them. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when the survey was done by the ministry some time back, I agree, of the 11 high schools that provided 80% of the incarcerated criminals, one was a traditional high school. I will not call a name or any other school names. And I think that school has changed quite dramatically, no. But part of what we have to do is to find where the youngsters are coming from and correct the problem at the early stage. In fact, this is a cry of those from the community. I was in my own constituency, and a young man from a particular area said to me, Dr. Chang, you have to go from the not only unattached youth and high schoolers, but go to the primary schools. Find them there, because when them start getting into scamming and such activity, you can't change them again. That was the word advice from somebody who understands. It's a reality, because some of the violence we are seeing is coming from the fact that advanced fee fraud has not only democratized crime, so to speak, but is putting in the hands of young adults, of children, 14 to 17-year-old boys, a power that they cannot handle. When they give a 15-year-old millions of dollars, and he can buy a gun, buy cars for everybody, driving a Mark X, and buy his mother, his sister, his auntie, his friend, high-end cars, they have given him the power that he doesn't have the mental capacity to even understand. So killing becomes a part of life. Yeah. We have to find them and correct that problem. We're doing some work, and I'm going to outline how we're doing it. And while we are not everywhere yet, we intend to get to most of those communities. I want to outline some of the changes we have made in the system as well, in seeking to find and treat these families, because not just the individuals we have to treat. We have to treat the families. Yep. Working with the crime prevention unit ministry and the other agencies, including some consultants that we had in the first CSP program, the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Health, and we had good collaborative effort. We actually created a number of additional professional sectors that will be helping in these communities, and I'm confident it will work. I understand the cry of my friend from a part of St. Andrew, and we're not ignoring him. I think you'll be seeing, he's a good MP, so he cries loudly when anything happens. But I want to tell you, he has a small problem. He has a small problem, because if I use a problem, my dear aunt who I put to rest on Saturday was a great needlecraft and seamstress. She would say, your problem is like a breast pocket. It's small, right? Your friend there. Your good friend, on that side, him have a pants with six pockets, 6 big pockets. His problem relative to yours. But we're going to reach them. But we have to design and work in a new way, and in doing so, we couldn't go take everything one time. We have to ensure a proof of concept and work on a number of years in collaboration with ministries, and in particular the Ministry of Education. In this year, what we have, a new social work feature we have created to all the members, a case manager. These are full-time professionals through the ministry who currently are with the Ministry of National Security. At some point as we expand, we may have to examine that role. My minister is very involved in it. I've seen their work, and so have I. They conduct risk to violence assessment of individuals. They develop treatment plans, just like a physician for a whole family and individual. Instead, direct persevere support services. Their aim is to bridge the gap between the needs and the available services. The case managers are supported by community liaison officers, which will engage and ensure that both of you have some of those liaison officers pretty soon. And of course, there's a group we're training now called Psychological First Aid Responders, trained by professional psychiatrists from the Ministry of Health. These are individuals who are already working or volunteering in the community, who are given the skills to identify challenges among individuals that they can refer them early before they become uncontrollable and cannot be helped. They refer families and individuals with needs to case managers, who in turn the case manager take them to the psychosocial support services, and to the social support service in the Ministry of Social Service. It is worth noting that at this point in time, some of our international partners are examining the use of case managers in some ways as the violence interrupters, which we are not abandoning, but have shown they have challenges, and it may not be the best route to persist with. So the case management system is looking like something that we'll not only maintain, but could be expanded and copied by others because it is proven to be a very valuable tool. In Salvamar last week where we were, we have 2 case managers, we need more. They are currently managing 70 students between Grange Hill and Godfrey Stewart. We introduced the community liaison aides. These are community-based, as I said, who may be employed or just volunteer in the community, with trained to assist the case managers in getting into the community, find the families, and working with them. We have graduated some 46 psychological first aid workers. This need to create the psychological, like a community aid Minister of Health, is that we will not get enough psychologists or professional psychiatrists at this point. We have to find someone who can identify the case early, and it's really the psychological first aid is like a community health aid. In the community, there are both full-time and part-time individuals who can identify the challenge and refer them quickly to where they can get professional help. They also provide trauma support to the victims and help to ward off acts of reprisal. They are equipped with the requisite skill set to identify emotionally disturbed persons and refer them to the case managers even before they commit acts of violence. The Ministry of Health will have the additional professional staff to accept the referrals. The research indicates that the Western parishes, unfortunately, have the most severe problem at this point. And the first child and adolescent guidance and therapeutic wellness center is being built in Montego Bay with the support of the private sector and government agencies on the management of the Ministry of Health at Barracks Road. Indeed, it's a good coincidence, but the first adolescent and child hospital will be opening in the Western region pretty soon. And we look to continue working with the Ministry of Health that provides this kind of service, to expand it to meet the demand. I'm aware that the public health officers in the Ministry of Health are sensitive to the situation. What we are looking at, they got some additional staff in the last budget. We are looking at how we can ensure through the Business Council to ensure the Ministry of Health gets the staff in that area. They have need for staff. Hospital staff is a big demand, and it's like homicide, that's where the excitement is. When you hear someone go to the hospital and can get quick surgery, and they open them and put on what them hand on that. That is all great stuff and interesting stuff, but that will not significantly impact the quality of life and the trend of violence in our society and the trauma it causes out there. Yeah. The public health issue and the psychosocial support required is critical. And part of what we're doing is to provide that support, that the Ministry of Health will get the required support to provide the services. We also have some people called the curfew monitors. These are community volunteers who are trained in basic conflict mediation. In fact, 29 of them have been gathered by the courts as certified mediators. They are responsible to identify vulnerable young people in the communities who are subject to child abuse. I repeat, their responsibility is to identify the vulnerable young people in the communities who are often subject to child abuse, human trafficking, and sexual abuse. And once we find them, to get them in the appropriate service for management, because they are the ones who end up causing Minister of Education the kind of problems we have been reading about in a number of schools. We have to catch them early and get them in a treatment plan and get entire family a treatment plan. The Minister of Finance just walked in, and they will be committing him to funding the Ministry of Health staff for psychosocial support. Madams, Mr. Speaker, we have embarked on a new and novel approach based on in terms of social investment. The entire team of persons indicated involved in efforts to steer and direct individuals away from violence. In a collaborative way, the team is working to resolve the social dysfunction, maintain peace, and offer opportunities for people. The activities of the team are proactive and designed to prevent individuals from being either victims or perpetrators of criminal violence. As we are executing within the framework of existing agencies, it will be sustainable and become normal social process. I'm saying, as opposed to a project where we take on individuals and fund it, and then when the project expires, the project goes. We are now making changes in the various agencies that we are working with in the ministries. In fact, there's a whole subgroup chaired by the Minister of National Security, Permanent Secretary, including Minister of National Security, the subgroup is chaired by the Ministry of National Security, Permanent Secretary, but we have the Ministry of Social Security, the Ministry of Education, and members of the Ministry of Local Government. And a comment, of course, on the role of the political directorate, because the work has shown, interestingly, that while we have established a strong community base and we're working, some of which I'm saying is not well known to my members of Parliament. Yet the research shows that where the MPs are involved, we get better results. And I'm saying frankly, in fact, the research has said, look, and I'm saying it doesn't matter who the MP is. In fact, we had a classic case in schools. The two schools were compared. The best primary school in terms of success academically, conduct, behavior, and everything was a school that every MP in the area was known by the school students. And ironically, the body area and the two MPs, one is from this side and one from the other side, they were well known by the school. And the school was doing very well. Another school, the worst performing school in the island, didn't know who the MP of the council was. Right? And the researchers' view is that MPs, by virtue of what you might call the level of the ability to bring more support to the schools, can make a difference and to get involved in the community as well. So, Mr. Speaker, the model of case managers, community liaison officers working in units extends attention beyond the individual and focus to the entire family. We are looking to improve and expand this model. You'll be seeing some of it in Salt Spring, and all other aspects of the programs required across the island. It's important to recognize a link between criminal violence and its contributing social factors has evolved. While poverty helps to create the environment, it is no longer the main driving force behind criminal violence. The reality is that the proliferation of advanced fee fraud, commonly known as lotto scamming, has given enormous power to some immature youngsters who cannot handle such power. Yeah. The result is violence. It's one of the main drivers of targeted criminal violence that we are seeing and helping, and it helps to explain why social overall crime victimization is still relatively low. But we continue to improve our intervention. We are about to start, we are starting another facet of CSSP program, which again will have to be upscaled another time, but we now do what we call an interministerial school support strategy. It came about because, Mr. Speaker, my comment was that we could not stay with unattached youths only, who are left school. We are actually tackling the problem after the event, and we would always have the problem on an ongoing basis and maybe even getting bigger rather than smaller. So, in discussion with all our partners, it was agreed we could spend some money at the school level. And we worked on a program in the Ministry of Education where we see the school as the entry point into the community. We have a particular program working with 34 primary and high schools, so we now have the primary school involved. And much of them relate to zones, but as I said in the beginning, the 105 communities identified by this PIOG are target communities. And as we settle in, and I know the Minister of Finance is keen on financing those areas. As he himself has said to me, we have to be able to afford them because our volatile communities provides a risk to the entire stability of society. And we cannot have our young children coming out, continue to be diversified into a life of crime as early as age 12 and 14. The Ministry of National Security is spearheading the committee I indicated earlier, and we are working, but we work closely with all the other agencies. The social safety net, we seek to bring the social safety net to the individual, to the family. For the part benefit, economic grants, civil registration, all part of the social safety net Jamaica has. We don't have a very tight social safety net, but it can be effective. When a poor family gets the part benefit, gets an enterprise grant after some training from HEART, and they get registered and get their ID, civil registration established, you can make have a transformative effect on them. And today, if the situation is that serious, we can even get social housing attached. the government has a comprehensive list of things what we need to bring them together that each one support the other. And that picture up there, we're having discussion in Greenfield with some students. It's an eye-opening activity. Although we have had some trauma in Greenfield, that school is, principal is an effective leader. She was preceded by a gentleman, Mr. Stewart, and now she's Miss, I think she's, well, I know her as Miss Donaldson, but she's married, her second name. But the entire staff is particularly cooperative, helpful, and we're able to work with them. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, when I went across the primary school, as we say, we are going to get involved. There are some fantastic kids there. If we catch them and provide the social support, we will begin to make the change we need in society.
Here, here.
As indicated, the earlier programs were focused on unattached youths and therefore a narrow demographic area, those who have dropped out of school. We're expanding it. The approach we are now using will be sustainable. That was unsustainable and ineffective. Current approach takes a much broader perspective. We're engaging through the schools. We're able to reach the vulnerable families in the community. Upon identifying a child, we move to the family and bring them to the social safety net. The family level and ultimately at the community level. So, for example, when we encounter a truant child, our child exhibiting troubling behavior, and I want to direct your attention a little bit to that diagram on the screen, but I'll come to it. We treat the child as well as we seek to address the family. The school becomes the point of contact because we don't find them easily before, although the Ministry of Health is a good postnatal clinic. It's not always to find the social problem at postnatal clinic. We get them at school so that you can find the truant, the one with abnormal behavior, otherwise the one who is failing to just attend school regularly. And once you identify the child, the case manager, well, the guidance counselor, and in many cases with the school resource officer, and we are expanding that program. And the other persons in the school, some more trained in psychological first aid, will identify the child and take them to get first a psychosocial analysis, and then we take them and get them to the social safety net. Working with the community liaison officer, we can then take them and the CSSB of the police. However difficult the community, we can now take that person to social workers to the family and begin the process of rescuing the family and the entire unit. The police, of course, will have to deal with the gangs. I mean, apologies for that. But the amount of the social safety net includes skill training for unattached youth who may be at home still, for the older siblings, economic support for the parents, paths, health benefits for the children. It is worth mentioning even the funding agencies require short-term results, but we are looking at a medium and long-term impact in this activity, Mr. Speaker. The schools themselves have specific initiatives and demand extra special staff, and the minister will look at how some of these schools can be managed. Things like literacy education acceleration program or critical programs. Program support services, the counseling services, are crucial. And on our display, I indicate what I call the virtuous circle of social investment in our communities. At the school, you have a number of personnel involved, including your guidance counselor at the beginning, who we have to include their staff, school resource officer, there's a case manager, and others who will work with the principals and the staff of the school. And those that need counseling will be taken to the wellness center first for psychosocial services. Diagnostic, social diagnostic is done, and then they are taken to the Ministry of Local Government, Social Security, the training program in the heart, etc., and then on to the family where we have to solve the family's problem. If it works well, I can guarantee that we'll have success. But we are still at a stage, Mr. Speaker, where we are overcoming some of the resistance from institutions. Because there's a tendency, I said, to remain isolated. But I think as we work together at the upper level, the ministries, permanent secretaries, we are getting responses and we'll be able to intervene in many schools. In fact, things like this school resource officer, not only by demand when problems go wrong. The Ministry of Education has a very good system of classifying the schools. A Tier 4 school has less than 10% performance in terms of what they require. Those are schools that will have challenges. We are going to ensure that the ministry can call on us and provide school resource officers in all those Tier 3 and 4 schools and any school that shows indication of problems. We're going to assign the case managers, that when they identify the social problems, they will be able to get into the system, because I said, despite of the appeal that the needy must not be excluded by those who exploit the inefficiencies, there are still problems in getting them there. And indeed, the very poor, Mr. Speaker, you understand, you have a conscience that is, you have some tough areas, we know them. And the very poor is the least likely to approach a social worker. They spend their entire day struggling to survive. They leave a young child in the house with a little sugar and water, literally, and walk the street. They don't have time to come to a meeting. They don't even know when the meeting is being held. It is often dependent on the council or the member of parliament or somebody like that, the pastor, to identify the problem and take them there. And then what we want to ensure is that they will be properly treated and they will get the benefits deserved on an objective basis, and we can then solve that fundamental issue of criminal tendency among our young people. Mr. Speaker, managing that includes having quality data. I won't go into the details because there's a lot of work, work is being done on it. But one of the next thing we'll be doing two major activities coming out of what we have just outlined here. We're seeking to establish better data management and common standards that agencies can discuss the problems with the same language. Here we have challenges. Some of the data in the Ministry of Health, they consider personal. The SDC does excellent data work in the community, but they have no budget. And I see so pointed the minister beside me. The Ministry of Local Government is up there. The Ministry of Education have one set of data, and the police have another set of data. Violence, hospital data, violence, victim of violence, etc. We have to find a center where we can get all that data, have a common standard,
Yes.
and then establish a space where we can analyze the data and take corrective measures in a comprehensive manner. In fact, we have some publication I showed to the MPs. There are some 7 years we have done violence audit and done data analysis, St. James, Westmoreland, and here the corporate area. And I'd like to share with you the quality data. And out of that data comes the information we can use to resolve some crucial issues. All right? Very critical. Data sharing committee in West Kingston, St. James, and Westmoreland, I'm going to certainly give one to the MP because it tells you what is happening in the community. We have put data liaison officers in various areas, and we're working to ensure we can put that. In fact, what I have indicated to the Permanent Secretary and to my entire team is that we'll look at establishing a central point at the PIOJ, where you establish the equivalent of what we call in the police, the C5 Command Center. Because the C5 gets all the data required on disorder, criminality, and everything, and we can plan strategically, proactively, and interrupt criminal activity. And they're working well. Because let me go a little bit. Last week, we had 2 incidents in Kingston, which demonstrate quite effectively police new position efficiency. The shooting in Kingston, which some people want to remind them about 50 people shot by police, unfortunately. But that incident took place successfully against the criminals because police were deployed strategically. Intelligence and know. Right? Come in there. Mr. Speaker, the police was placed here because we had intelligence. We know there were going to be action. And they ran into a vehicle which was with 6 heavily armed men. 4 were shot, 5 arms recovered, 1 policeman was shot. Again, because the communication, the other police hotspot patrol was in the west, was coming to assist the police on time, immediately. They had the mobility, they had the communication, and they had the intelligence. The one that failed in the east, the first report I'm having, and I'll tell you that it was a sad one. We had 3 murder victims, and 1 youngster shot. 2 were children. 1 is the son of a police sergeant. Right here, what happened? The police was deployed. There were 2 police deployed to prevent that. The first report is that somebody called the police. No, that can happen. It shouldn't happen that way because the police in these areas should not move unless this command center directs them. But they are known in the area. They know the area. And people will call them who they know to check on something elsewhere. And they drove off from the spot, and with less than a minute, the criminals who were watching intervened, just, as I said, sprayed whoever was on the sidewalk and killed 3. It was traumatic. You know, we have done the band audits, I said, but that's the kind of operation. But I said the police was present and reflects the increased strategic deployment. We're going to continue that. We're expanding it across the island, and we're improving our intelligence, and we'll be able to interrupt the criminals. I've just mentioned that because that is the data on the communication that give us the response. We want to do that for social services. And the PIOJ will have data that we can talk about, look at, and bring it to respond to the communities, even before your members start complaining. And I assure the member from that part of St. Andrew that will not be allowed to grow into a big pocket. You won't get a big pocket. You will not get a big pocket. Tourism. All right. Very much. A lot was done in the Ministry of National Security. Right, indeed. Right. This is a regular publication that you may wish to wish from the City Security Secretariat. The booklet. Live Good is a social program which you can see. If the members go back and see us in Grange Hill, along with the speech. Mr. Speaker, demonstrated in closing, transformation depends on a whole of government approach. We have to have the data, we have to engage all the ministries, and in particular the social service ministries. Health, education, and local government, as Ministerial Labour and Social Security, is what will determine the reduction and sustained reduction of criminal violence in the country. The Ministry of National Security is providing a safe space for them to operate in. That's what our objective is. So transformation depends on the whole of government approach and strong include community leadership. We therefore welcome meaningful partnerships and collaboration, whether they come from our international partners, the private sector, or non-governmental organizations. In our efforts, we collaborate closely with NGOs such as Project STAR and the Multicare Youth Foundation. These organizations, however, operate within the government's established policy framework. We cannot reach beyond that. Now, we are not preventing anyone from working. We are not saying we will not give you some support, but the government taxpayer support have to come with agents that work with the institutions of government. That's our policy. We're not a service club organization. We are a government company that runs the country. So we link up with these 2 projects because they are working with us. You know, we're not concentrating in Project STAR. Project STAR is working in 2 committees. We are working in 100, and especially 7 zones. They overlap in 2, but it's a private sector-driven operation. They have some resources themselves, and they naturally, in 1 year, they do better than we do. We accept. They can place workers easier than us because when a civil servant calls a company to down and say, look, I have 10 people trained in truck driving. Will you take any? They hear they're coming from West Kingston or Arctic Gardens. The first day they put the file on file 13 because a public servant calling. They have to do it. That's what happened. On the other hand, if the head of a private sector agency, if the head of a private sector call and say, look, I have 10 trained people. I can assure you they're trained. 10 of them. That's the fact. So you want to focus, integrated approach, not isolated. Projects must be complementary, not competitive, and government institutions must be strengthened to deliver services so that they can be sustainable and remain so in the long run. Mr. Speaker, we'll be ensuring that the entire outline I've given to you will be converted to policy of social intervention for crime prevention, and take to my cabinet colleagues that there can be permanence in the policy itself and a full understanding across the board of what we do. The Correctional Service I'll not spend a lot of time on, but it's crucial that rehabilitation and reintegration of offenders as pillars in crime prevention and community transformation.
Here, here.
The National Correctional Policy and the visa was tabled as a green paper recently. So we have tabled two critical green papers. Today we did the visa policy, which will improve our border control and the framework for border control, visitor arrival, etc. And our correctional policies in the House, a green paper. And it is a pivotal moment for correctional service. Like some of our years of security, correctional service was treated like a Cinderella child. This government is changing that. We're going to ensure that we have an effective, efficient correctional service as well as upgraded facilities.
Here, here.
Our two, Mr. Speaker, our two prisoners, one is almost ageless, Nobody can tell me how old they are at St. Catherine. They say they were 30 years old. It was built when the Spanish was here. So you have to go back to 1494. They start building the one of Spanish town. The other one is our slave trading post over 100 years. We are going to change that.
We're going to change that.
It's a big undertaking, but we have the Development Bank of Jamaica active at work, and that is one project we'll say that in the third term you'll see a new prison evolving out of the plains of Designed to have top security, rehabilitation, and effective, supported by effective reintegration and transformation program.
If you can dream, so
I want to.
sit down one side. Sit down. While awake in a dream. Blues busters. You're right.
He'll never get up first. We'll come back. I want to welcome the appointment of Commissioner of Corrections, Brigadier Raj Mason, and those leadership. We are confident that the transformation we seek will take place as it builds on the groundwork of the Commissioner, Lieutenant Colonel Gero, who retired earlier this year. Good men for working to bring about the kind of transformation the correctional service require, and we have some good officers and workers between the correctional and the probation service that is there to ensure we can reduce the recidivism and restore the kind of public order we wish in conjunction with the police force. We have taken steps to bring about significant change in laws. Everyone here knows about the Zones of Special Operation, MOCA 2018, Firearm Prohibition Restriction Regulation Act. Amendments were done to the Process of Crime Amendment Act, Process of Crime, Money Laundering Prevention, Trafficking Persons, Criminal Justice Anti-Gang Amendment, Corrections Amendment Act, and of course the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures. I just mentioned those because we have gone through them in this House, where we have creating the appropriate legal framework for the operation of a comprehensive anti-crime prevention and public order activity. Today we laid the visa policy. It's the second policy we have placed on the House, demonstrating the policy department's commitment not only bringing legislation, but leaving behind effective policy framework for operate and ensure a strong framework for security going forward in the country, where we can give assurance to the public of good order, public safety, and significant reduction in violence across our society. It is on that foundation we'll build a prosperous society, Mr. Speaker, and that's the commitment of this country. In closing, I want to re-emphasize that we are executing our policies in a manner that is generating success and assures of sustainability. We have made the investment, we are seeing the results. We will complete the investment, even in the third term. We have demonstrated that strong security provides a foundation for effective social investment and transformation. You cannot do without one without the other. I wish to emphasize that the broad cross-section of social investment and the whole of government approach, coupled with creativity and innovation, will lead to the social stability we all desire.
That's this government.
Madam Speaker, I must address the members of this side, highlight even those of their own thinking have evolved with times. while they remain entrenched in outdated thinking, I invite them to read and join the progress from that side. Again, refer to the article by Mr. Castaneda and Mr. Onimami. One was born a communist, Minister of Finance in Mexico. The other, similar, both professors in the United States University now. And they have an extensive theory and the need for increased emphasis on security, outlining how much more the safe developed countries have more police officers and other activities to deal with even less crime than we have. It costs, but I just take two extracts from it. And I quote, security must be regarded as an essential component of social protection. Security, public safety, must be seen as an essential component of social protection.
Here, here.
And affirm that tackling violence is essential because it obstructs the exercise and enjoyment of all other rights.
Yes. True.
The unnecessary debate over the use of what was in the Constitution, the state of public emergency, was in fact a most unnecessary activity.
Yes.
Its use have saved hundreds of lives. But this government have invested, having done the work to take our police force to another level and begin the process of investing in our volatile communities, will in fact achieve the objective. Let me inform my fellow Jamaicans, this is a government of transformation and sustainability. This is a government that is setting the stage for prosperity. Our critical policies take us on the right road. Security protects, education transforms and empowers, and that prosperity abounds. My friends, as a closing, let us go to the good book and remind them of Matthew 5:45. You want to read it from Mr. You know the Bible, right? Matthew 5, with apology. Sorrows would fall on both the just and the unjust. May God continue to bless Jamaica and the government of Andrew Michael Owens. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, just one correction. We did make mention of the cultural group as Hatfield, but rather it is Hartford.
Mr. Speaker, I think this Honorable House will all agree that this was truly an excellent presentation by our Minister of National Security. Mr. Speaker, I now beg to move for the recommittal of all the items from announcements through to public business in order to complete the agenda for the day and to facilitate the notices of motions given orally, in particular for the motions therein to be moved by the respective members. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the sectoral debate be suspended.
Mr. Speaker, I further beg to move that the sectoral debate be suspended until the 21st of May at 2 p.m. in the George William Gordon House. May it please you, sir.
The question is now on the floor for the sectoral debate to be suspended until the date announced and that we recommit to the full agenda. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Announcement.
laid on the table of the House are the following. Annual report of the Jamaica Tourist Board for the financial year 2022-2023. Annual report of Jamaica Vacations Limited for the financial year 2019-2020. Under the Trademarks Act, we have the Trademarks Amendment, Rules 2024 and its resolution. Under the National Identification and Registration Act, we have National Identification and Registration Regulations 2024 and resolution. National Identification and Registration Identity Services Regulations 2024 and resolution. National Identification and Registration Assignment of National Identification Numbers Regulations 2024 and resolution. National Identification and Registration Information Security Regulations of 2024 and resolution. National Identification and Registration Appeal Tribunal Regulations 2024 and resolution. Under the Revenue Administration Act, we have the National Identification and Registration Electronic Forms Regulations 2024 and the Revenue Administration Assignment of Registration Numbers for enrollment under the National Identification and Registration Act Regulations 2023. And finally, we have the Green Paper numbered 03 of 2024 entitled the National Visa Policy 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, report from committees, notice of motion given orally.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following. The Trademarks Act, the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2024 resolution, whereas Section 78 of the Trademarks Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may from time to time make such rules subject to affirmative resolution, A, for regulating the practice under the Act, including the service of documents, B, for classifying goods for the purposes of registration of trademarks, C, for making or requiring duplicates of trademarks and other documents, D, for securing and regulating the publishing and selling or distributing in such manner as he may think fit of copies of trademarks and other documents, E, for the regulation of trademark agents, F, prescribing fees payable under this Act, G, generally for regulating the business of the office in relation to trademarks and all things by this Act placed under the direction or control of the Registrar. And whereas on the 25th day of March 2024, the Minister made the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2024. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2024 resolution. The Trademarks Amendment Rules 2024 is affirmed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motions. Whereas by virtue of Section 33(1) of the National Identification and Registration Act, herein referred to as the Act, the authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations generally for giving effect to the provisions of the Act. And whereas by virtue of Section 33(2) of the Act, such regulations may provide, among other things, for the forms to be used in connection with any application, notice, certificate, or any other document required to be issued under the Act, the procedures and practices to be followed by the authority in the collection and verification of information required for the enrollment of individuals and disposal of information collected in respect of an individual whose enrollment is refused, the procedure and processes for the manufacture, preparation, issue, surrender, cancellation, renewal and replacement of national identification cards, the form and content of national identification cards, the procedure for the correction and registration of changes to the identity information of enrolled individuals, the fees that may be charged by the authority, the procedure for verification and authentication of the identity information of enrolled individuals, the procedure for archiving information in the custody of the authority, The procedure for the destruction of identity information in the custody or control of the authority, where retention of such information is no longer necessary for the purposes of the Act. The form of warrants to be issued under Section 29(1) of the Act and any other matter required to be prescribed. And whereas by virtue of Section 3 of Section 33 of this Act, regulations may be made that section may be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas on the 8th day of May 2024, the authority, with the approval of the Minister, made the National Identification and Registration Regulations 2024, now therefore be resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the National Identification and Registration Regulations 2024 resolution. The National Identification and Registration 2024 are hereby affirmed. Whereas, by virtue of Section 33(1) of the National Identification and Registration Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, the authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations generally for giving effect of the provisions of the Act, and whereas by virtue of Section 33(2)(d) of the Act, such regulations may provide for the procedure for the generation and assignment of national identification numbers, and whereas by virtue of subsection 3 of Section 33 of the Act, regulations made under this section shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas on the 8th day of May 2024, the authority, with the approval of the Minister, made a national identification and registration assignment of national identification numbers regulations 2024, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the National Identification and Registration Assignment of National Identification Numbers Regulations 2024 resolution. The National Identification and Registration Assignment of National Identification Numbers Regulations 2024 are hereby affirmed. Whereas,
Minister, sorry, just for the record, please state the name of the regulation going forward and those before.
no problem. So the first is the National Identification and Registration Regulations 2024 resolution. The second that I just read is the National Identification and Registration Assignment of National Identification Numbers Regulations 2024 resolution. Third, the National Identification and Registration Information Security Regulations 2024 resolution. Whereas by virtue of Section 33(1) of the National Identification and Registration Act, herein referred to as the Act, the authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations generally for giving effect to the provisions of the Act, and whereas by virtue of Section 33(2) of the Act, such regulations may provide, among other things, for the procedures and processes for the storage, management, security, and confidentiality of information stored in the national databases, including technical standards with respect thereto for the preservation, custody, and safekeeping of information collected by the authority and for any other matter required to be prescribed. And whereas by virtue of subsection 3 of Section 33 of the Act, regulations made under the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas on the 8th day of May 2024, the authority, with the approval of the Minister, made the National Identification and Registration Information Security Regulations 2024, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. Resolution may be cited as the National Identification and Registration Information Security Regulations 2024 resolution. The National Identification and Registration Information Security Regulations 2024 are hereby affirmed. The National Identification and Registration Appeal Tribunal Regulations 2024 resolution. Whereas by virtue of Section 33(1) of the National Identification and Registration Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, the authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations generally for giving effect to the provisions of the Act, and whereas by virtue of Section 3 of Section 33 of the Act, regulations made under that section shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas on the 8th day of May 2024, the authority, with the approval of the Minister, made the National Identification and Registration Appeal Tribunal Regulations 2024, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the National Identification and Registration Appeal Tribunal Regulations 2024 resolution. The National Identification and Registration Appeal Tribunal Regulations 2024 are hereby affirmed. The National Identification and Registration Identity Services Regulations 2024 resolution. Whereas, by virtue of Section 33(1) of the National Identification and Registration Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, the authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations generally for giving effect to the provisions of the Act. And whereas, by virtue of Section 33(2)(1) of the Act, such regulations may provide for the procedure for verification and authentication of the identity information of enrolled individuals, and whereas by virtue of Section 3 of Section 33 of the Act, regulations made under that section shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas on the 8th day of May 2024, the authority, with the approval of the Minister, made the National Identification and Registration Identity Services Regulations 2024, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the National Identification and Registration Identity Services Regulations 2024 resolution. The National Identification and Registration Identity Services Regulations 2024 are hereby affirmed. Thank you, Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today. No, you don't need to. It's affirmative. On the motion of adjournment, if you want, you could say. Mr. Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today. I therefore beg to move that this Honourable House be adjourned until May 21, 2024 at 2 p.m. when the speakers in the continuation of the sectoral debate will be the Honourable Delroy Chuck, Member of Parliament for North Eastern St. Andrew, and Minister of Justice, as well as the Honourable Floyd Green, Member of Parliament for St. Elizabeth, Southwestern, and Minister of Agriculture, Mining and Fisheries. May it please you, Mr. Speaker. You want to.
The request of adjournment is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House now adjourn until the date that has been fixed.
Crime is Jamaica's #1 threat. As we stay